All right. Hi, guys. I'm Paloma Young. I am the costume designer of Juliet. We are in the lobby of the Stephen Sondheim Theater, where this show happens usually 8 times a week. And this show went on a long design journey. Most musicals especially do have a long germination process in terms of like when you first start talking with the rest of the creative team, so the director, the composer, and the book writer, in terms of what is this show going to look like once it's eventually on stage. So this show we originally developed in the UK. We played on the West End in London. Actually, to be fair, we developed it, we rehearsed in London, then we did the show in Manchester, then we did the show in London. Then we did the show with a new cast in Toronto, and then we did Broadway. And since then, we have also opened an Australian company of the show. So, and even in the Australian version of the show, we've made some adjustments to the design, and some of that has to do with the nature of this show in particular, and some of that is just gonna happen over time. You learn, especially from people, I have Lisa Preston here, who is our wardrobe supervisor here of the show. You learn that certain costume pieces that you love are absolute nightmares in terms of being usable 8 times a week, either for the actors or the people who take care of the clothes. So, backing up to the design, the heart of the show, the heart of like where this all comes from, is Juliet is a reimagining of sort of the end and the continuation of the Romeo and Juliet tale, but it features Shakespeare and Shakespeare's wife, and Shakespeare's wife is like, I think the ending of your show sucks. Why should Juliet kill herself? She's only had one boyfriend. She should just like be able to continue living her life. Like just because he's an idiot and killed himself, like why not give her another chance? And it is sort of a way, Anne is William Shakespeare's wife, and certainly as like a middle-aged mother, I definitely identify with that character a lot, but she's sort of leads you through the story, and she's sort of trying to rewrite her own story, where she feels like she got married too young, and maybe she's in this unhappy marriage. And like, can she create this character that doesn't have to settle for those things that she feels like she settled for? And then there's a lot of fighting back and forth, and there's a lot of playing with narrative, and the sort of nature of theater. And there's players, so Shakespeare had his troupe of players, and in this show, we also have players. And the players are really important to the show because they are also like, wait, I also want to help tell this story. I also don't like always what Shakespeare has written. And even though they don't talk a whole lot, they speak a lot through dance in the show in terms of their eagerness to try out Anne's version of the story. And there's a lot of unique interplay between them. And so all of those player costumes were developed to fit the personality of the people that are wearing them, both their bodies and the way that they move, and then just who they sort of are. Are they kind of sexy and flirty and girly, or are they very butch? And we have made a lot of adjustments. We have sort of key costume tracks. Like each player has 6 different looks, but sometimes an actor in London playing that track has been in that category of like very girly, flirty femme. And then we get someone else in that track who is non-binary and sort of butch and like masculine, and we like readjust and totally redesign the costume. So I'm going to show you a couple of the player pieces, and there's some renderings in there, but they're kind of the bed of the style. They're the thing that translate the basic idea, which is this show is Shakespeare. Like we have a lot of ideas in our head about what would a Shakespeare costume look like? Does like anyone have like, what does it look like? Yeah?
Maybe puffy sleeves.
Puffy sleeves. What else is in it? Like, yeah.
It's usually that Renaissance style.
Renaissance style, but like, what does that mean, Renaissance style? Like, yeah.
And like flowing silhouettes, or like maybe a little bit plusher fabrics, depending on.
Flowing and plush fabrics, yeah.
Like corsets and a lot of mixing of patterns.
Corsets and patterns, yeah.
Tight pants.
Tight pants. Yeah, and I also like, I think we think of like ruffs. Like Queen Elizabeth wore a lot of these things called whisks and cod pieces, which, so when I designed the show, I was like, people are gonna think they're coming to see some version of Romeo and Juliet. Like, let's give them one of everything they think they're gonna see. So we have one cod piece in the show. We have one big whisk, which is worn by Lady Capulet. We have several poofy sleeves. We have plenty of tight pants, but those tight pants, instead of being like a pair of hose, are a pair of skinny jeans that Romeo wears. So it's taking a lot of these Renaissance ideas, these like Elizabethan silhouettes, and also Italian Renaissance, which is slightly different. So I did a lot of period research, but then took that research and processed it through a modern lens. And by modern, also, I forgot to mention, all of the music was written by Max Martin, writes pop music. Like all of the pop music, basically. Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Katy Perry, Adele, The Weeknd, Bon Jovi. Just like truly, like people are like, wait, this guy wrote this song too. So the style, the modern part of the style actually starts in sort of the late 80s until now, in terms of like what is street style, but like also just sort of key pieces of like late 90s, early 2000s in terms of silhouettes for a lot of our people. So that's like, did some research, like that's the general idea. We got streetwear and we have Renaissance, and we just kind of mash them together. And then we figure out like character. And so I gave you 4 different research collages. One is for Shakespeare, one is for Juliet, one is for Anne, and one is for Romeo. And so our Juliet is quite buoyant, and so they all have sort of signature jackets. And Juliet is Anne's version of Juliet. She's very spunky. Like, she decides to run away to Paris. She's like, let's go have a good time. Like, I don't really like listening to people older than me, so we made her this like little poofy party dress. And this corset is based on like an Italian Renaissance-based corset. And the skirt is like, you can imagine it being a long flowy gown, but we turned it into a little bubble skirt. This dress also does tricks. It gets like compressed until it's revealed behind a clothing rack. And it also has a pocket, so there is a harness she wears at some point, and she hangs on a chandelier. So this is, what do you call this dress, Lisa?
Domino.
The domino dress. Domino is the song that it first appears in, which is a lot of times how we name a costume when it's in a giant show. And sometimes we call it the pink puffball. And then she wears it with this jacket. So this is like a satin bomber jacket, but we added these little, this is called the Juliet sleeve, the little tiny puff, in a sort of cheeky nod. It's custom embroidered. It has the JC I pulled off of like Juicy Couture, but is also Juliet Capulet's initials, and a little Latin on the back for Eye of the Tiger. And it was originally built to be a reversible jacket, and it reverses into this jacket. And then we discovered that it's just a nightmare for laundry. to have this reversible jacket. And we did a little reverse on stage, but it was too clunky with the choreography. So we just made 2 jackets, but this one is the one that we really see. And so we have this sort of like pretend like, hey, look, it's your pink jacket that we've seen Juliet wearing. And then she puts it on and it's a yellow jacket. So we like fake the embroidery on the inside here, and we fake the little pink puff sleeve by someone holding up their hand there. And that way Juliet gets like a whole new look for a couple more songs, but she's still wearing the same jacket. So that's Juliet's signature jacket. And then Shakespeare is based on an Elizabethan doublet, but it's also very rooted in, there are these jackets from the 70s that like rockers would wear, this East-West jackets, which have a lot of leather applique and piecework in them. And so I was like, Shakespeare's a little behind the times. He's like trying to be cool, but he's like the middle-aged guy trying to be the cool rocker dad. So that's where his jacket, like he comes out and he's like, I'm a rock star, but he's also from the country, just like Anne. We gave him these sort of earthy colors, but then earthy plus rhinestones. So that's Shakespeare's jacket. And then Anne, after she kind of like, she inserts herself into the story. So she's wearing sort of a more traditional Elizabethan day dress when we see her. And then in the middle of the story, she sort of goes behind a curtain and comes out, and there's a rendering in there. She's in this like short little green skirt and corset. She's got a tattoo on her arm of wild roses, and then she has her own little denim jacket. I told the director, Luke, I was like, I feel like Anne, if she was given $1,000 to spend anywhere, or like a huge shopping spree, she would shop at Free People. And then he didn't know what that was, because it's not really a thing in the UK, but it's this sort of like rocker meets boho country vibe. She talks a lot about how she's stuck in the country. And so we had this hand painted with the Hathaway crest, which is her family name. Shakespeare has his crest on the back, which was a crest that he commissioned because he wasn't nobility, but he was famous enough that he was like, I think I should have a family crest. So he paid someone to do that. Here's Hathaway's thing, and then it's also like just like beautifully like painted, embroidered. So when you guys come up later, you can take a close look at the costumes and just this like beautiful handwork that is done on these pieces. And then the 4th person is Romeo, who, spoiler alert, comes back from the dead at the end of Act 1 because Shakespeare wants to cause problems. So he's like this emo zombie. He's not actually a zombie, but he does come back from the dead. So I definitely played like push the gothiness of it. And he's this like rebel without a cause. He's kind of an idiot. So we just gave him like the best rebel without a cause jacket. Very like wears, instead of wearing his heart on his sleeve, he wears it on the back. And it is also supposed to be, he's very much a creation of Shakespeare. There's a moment where Anne pulls out the line, both like in dignity, if not a name, because she's like, or you made him in your own image. And it's sort of like Shakespeare thinks Romeo is like cool, and he's kind of a douche. So that's where this jacket came from. So both this and this were like decorated and embellished by this woman, Jules Crowbooth, who just goes by Jules. And she's like been making rocker jackets in New York since the 70s on the Lower East Side. So there's a lot of, like, I give a lot of direction, but I'm also bringing in artisans that just sort of go off on their own and will run with an idea that I give them. This is the shirt that Romeo wears with the jacket. So, it's a little bit, we were inspired by, this is now previous era Harry Styles at the Met Gala, a little like femme straight boy. And then we also have this character of Francois, who shows up and is briefly engaged to Juliet. And he's kind of like a party kid. I was thinking of like, it's starting out with a party. We meet him at a party for him in Paris. And I was thinking of like my Super Sweet 16 and like what those kids would be wearing, like at their Super Sweet 16 party in Renaissance Paris. Also, the fleur-de-lis did not exist in Paris yet, but also the set has the Eiffel Tower, which also didn't exist in Paris. So that was a very conscious decision of like, hey, pop music is all about iconography. What do you think about when you think about Paris? What do you think about when you think about France? What do you guys think about? Eiffel Tower. Max Martin's teenage daughter was like, this is like Marie Antoinette goes to the gym. And I was like, actually, Marie Antoinette is later. But then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, like those pastel colors like is sort of France. So all of our ensemble, when we get to France and they're on the streets, they're in this like streetwear, they're in Marie Antoinette goes to the gym. That like candy color pink sort of thing. So the shapes are still more Renaissance. Than the sort of later Georgian stuff, but I was definitely like, oh yeah, that's how we approach this design. It's about iconography and feeling, just like pop music, and less about staying true to the material. But then we get to our players, and we meet our players, and they're in rehearsal for this Shakespeare's version of Romeo and Juliet. They're all getting their new pages to their script, and they're stretching and they're working out. And what I don't have here, what I didn't bring up, is I bought a lot of vintage T-shirts for Shakespeare festivals. So like there's a T-shirt, actually I think there's one. Here we go. So we cut up this T-shirt and put it on the back of this suede doublet. It's from Antony and Cleopatra at the Shakespeare Theater, which is in DC, December 3rd, 1996 to January 19th, 1997. So we got these T-shirts because I was thinking about a lot of actors when they come to a rehearsal, will wear T-shirts from their previous shows or sweatshirts or jackets. And it's sometimes like a little bit of a way of showing off, like, hey, I was in the original cast of Hamilton. Like, yeah, that's right. So it was sort of like this Shakespearean version of I just happened to be wearing my Antony and Cleopatra jacket. That's why I was in this show. So not everyone has it, but like sprinkled in through the cast as you see them sort of warming up on stage as the audience is coming in, is wearing a lot of these, the Shakespeare T-shirts. And then it's just mixing like Dear Kate, who was a swing and then left us. We have this abandoned costume. It will go to someone else someday if anyone is ever this tiny again. But so we have a corset here, and Larger Than Life, which is the first song that's like Welcome Shakespeare. You know, everyone's sort of in Shakespeare's sort of earthy tones. He comes up from the stage, and so some of the actors are in corsets. Some of those are on. We don't have like male and female swings, but we do have a division which we call the Romeo crew and the Juliet crew, which mostly refers to vocal ranges. So some of the people wearing corsets are on the Juliet crew, but then some of the people wearing corsets are on the Romeo crew. So it's a very like, there's a lot of fluidity with gender in the show. Kate was on the Juliet crew, and she was a dancer. Now, everyone is a dancer. Everyone has to dance in the show, but some people are more specifically just there to lead the dance and sort of be featured in a dance. And then some people are like, I can learn the moves, and also I understudy Juliet, or like also I understudy the nurse. And so they're sort of like a singer actor first and then a dancer second. But the front of this corset is boned, but it's boned with steel spiral, which is what you use in ballet corsets. So like some corsets, you'll feel them and they're very hard. And like this one is very, very flexible. And then the sides of it are just fully stretch, so that she just has like a lot of movement in terms of like, you know, we're wearing these corsets, but then they have to do a lot of like this hip hop moves, which are like this. So there was a lot of R&D with the choreographer and the choreography team to figure out like, how do I make something that looks like a corset, but can move with all of these very specific, like compressive moves. You see my dance moves. I'm not a dancer first. So this she would wear with yoga leggings, which are not here. Most of the laundry we just sort of keep packed away. And then she has this like cute little overskirt, very much like Renaissance fair feeling. Gives us a nice flow and a nice texture. And then she has this jacket. With her little Old English letters, which was actually inspired by the original person who wore this track in London. And we never were able to get these letters on the jacket. She was like, my mantra is can't stop, won't stop. So I was like, well, now that we're doing this again, we can put them on Kate's jacket. Already saw this is another, all of our ensemble also have names. So it's not just like Romeo crew number 5. This is Augustine. And even the swings, which are the people that come in if someone is sick or on vacation or injured, they have their own names, and then they'll be like, this is Thomas in the Augustine track. So we used a lot of like traditional Renaissance construction, but then we sort of made the shape. Like this shape would normally be like very fitted. On a man, it's like a man's doublet, but I wanted it to feel a little bit more like late 90s, like hip hop streetwear, which was a very like boxy rectangular shape. So there's a lot of playing, it's the same with this one. There's a lot of playing with silhouette and moving away from specifically what it looked like on a person in Shakespeare's time. So this is another one of our ensemble jackets. It's another one of our dancers. And so these chains, like when he does a lot of this little arm movements and stuff, the chains really accentuate the movement and they catch the light. So this is one of my favorite jackets. And then we just have some thistle painting on the back. And then this is one of the corsets that's worn by Gregory, who is on our Romeo crew. And so they wear this also in Larger Than Life. And then they wear it with these jogger pants that we've added a little bit of little glitz and glamour to the sports stripe on the side. And then they wear it with a t-shirt underneath, like a cut-up t-shirt. Feels very Flashdance. And then there's this little medallion. Once it zips up the front, there's a medallion and some chain. So that's an example of like one of our corsets that lives on or is worn by someone on the Romeo crew. And then our ensemble goes through, I haven't brought out all their different looks. They They have a different look when they go to Verona, which is like, now we're in our story. And it's dark, and it's a funeral for Romeo, and Juliet's sad, and then they go to Paris, and there's this big party. So here's Francois at his party that his dad is throwing for him. And then at the party, everyone is in white and gold with a little bit of this kind of oxidized green and like very, very sparkly. It's a very, very posh Paris party. And so these are just a couple of things that the ensemble wear. So everyone has very much like their own look. And then these things are like molded. They're slightly flexible to look like kind of like Baroque architecture that the set designer Sutra put on this like giant pipe organ that's on stage. And then there's a wedding. And at the wedding, which is also like a boy band concert, all of the ensemble is in like these creamy whites plus like rainbow colors, these like jewel tone rainbow colors. So these are also people in the ensemble. And like these, I think if you look at them on the hanger, feel like almost like they could just be in like ye old Shakespeare show. But then you have to imagine like this is paired with a pair of stretchy baseball pants and sneakers. Like everyone has dirty white sneakers in the ensemble. That's on purpose. We make them dirty on purpose. And in fact, sometimes I come and see the show and I'm like, oh, someone got a new pair of shoes and they're not dirty enough. So this is just like some of the beautiful piecework that gets done, detail work that gets done on these pieces. So when you come and you get a chance to like look at close, like the construction is pretty insane on some of these things. So at that wedding, Juliet comes out, she's getting married. She has this thing, it's from like 10,000 different eras. It's barely a little bit of Renaissance. It's like mostly the dream wedding dress of the original Juliet on the West End. But it's supposed to be like girly and sweet and a little bit oppressive. Like, oh no, what has she gotten herself into? She's about to get married again. And then a lot of stuff goes wrong. Like, actually her fiance is in love with someone else, and her best friend is very complicated. We liked the idea of this juxtaposition of like a big fluffy party dress, and I think we've seen this trope many times of like someone being really sad in a big poofy dress, which can be like a fun thing for an actor to play with, a fun thing for an audience to watch. So she's stomping around in her big poofy dress. She has these like beautiful sort of bell sleeves that she just like rips off and like throws on the stage. And then at this point, she's like, she starts to sing Eye of the Tiger. Like, I don't need to listen to any of you. I don't need to listen to, like, my parents. I don't need to listen to this lady Anne who keeps telling my story because I don't want to do what she wants me to do. Like, I don't want to do what anyone wants you to do. So, and then in the middle of the song, the lights flash, and then she's wearing this. Which is we call her Roar outfit. Yes, thank you, Lisa. It's very heavy. This is even heavier. So this is like fully stoned. The bodice part is stoned. And then these are her little pumpkin pants. Like one of those things, this is the only like full pair of pumpkin hose that we have in the show. There's one that's sort of mixed with some joggers and one of our ensemble members. And then she's got these boots. Which is like I said, everyone's in dirty white sneakers, but she does get a custom pair of boots, thigh-high boots that she wears with this, which are sort of more traditional. Both the pumpkin hose and the boots are sort of more of a masculine thing, and the corset is very like a feminine shape. So like that magical transformation, like the way that works. It's going to be less impressive here because it's not on a body, but she has this like little pearl that she grabs, and then she pulls that.
Yes?
Yeah, you can do it. Pull it. And then someone is behind her and pulls that, and the entire front of the dress
It's magnetic.
splits open. And then someone has like gone from off stage and grabbed her a gold microphone and has her feather, and that just goes right there. So it's just like takes about a second and a half to do the whole transformation. And yeah.
This also opens in the back. So at the top of the show, the dresser puts together the front, and then we get her in through the back so that it opens both ways.
I'm going to show the magnets. Let's see if we pull it out a little bit. So when she comes off stage she gets into this first. So she wears this the whole time she's at the wedding, minus the feather. And then this goes on top of it.
I'm going to open the back up so you can see.
And then she'll get in this dress in a way that we get into a lot of dresses, which is just a zipper in the back.
So she steps in, and when we pull this opening, it'll open up, and I can show you after. The tube goes through little teeny things back and forth on either side to hold it together, hold it closed, and then there's 3 magnets in here. So this is the string to the pull. So when she pulls it, that string goes out, and the person behind her, as she's doing that, the person behind her grabs this and pulls, and the magnets release, and she's left in the roar without the feather. So it's kind of genius.
It's a simple genius. All right, so she's going to zip that back up. Any more questions? Yeah.
I had just a curious one, like how are really ornate costumes like that laundered?
Well, body parts are laundered every day. They go in. There is a person who is dedicated. Their full-time job is doing laundry. And some of our corsets and more delicate things go out for dry cleaning. They have a dry cleaning pickup every week. And then some of them go in for just like a little hand washing. The insides of some of the corsets get wiped down well. Some of them get a little dipped, a little hand wash and dry. But that's a full-time job here. And we have a full-time stitcher, someone who is here every day, because as you can imagine, delicate materials are danced in 8 times a week, and the dancing is intense. So there's a lot of tears, a lot of rips, with chains and pins, things like that. Things get caught, things rip, anywhere from like a tiny hole. We have a crew of people who come in every day and check every costume, not just looking because we can all look at it, but really like getting up under each thing, checking inside, checking in to make sure that nothing in here is falling apart. Like every detail that you can check, anything that's elastic, beading falling out, zippers coming apart. So there are people here, I think we have 3 people for 4 hours a day come in and check everything. And then somebody is there to stitch things that go wrong and to launder. So it's a big thing. And then there are 6 dressers on the show who come in the evening. And every show is different with the amount of dressers they have on their wardrobe crew. We have 6. It's always dependent on the number of costumes, costume changes, and size of the cast. So our 6 dressers come in and dress all of the actors throughout the show. And there are 6 main changes. And the fastest one is about 28 seconds. And that's actually Juliet's first change in the dress that we don't have up here, but she comes off stage, puts this on under it's under a jacket that has a fake front dress.
If you watch the Tony Award performance, that's what she's wearing. It's not what she wears in the show. A lot of PR, they make different choices in terms of what they wear, but it's this long green robe that has this like flat front panel.
And it takes 3 dressers and 1 hairdresser 28 seconds to change her. There's somebody in front, there's somebody behind her, and there's somebody on the side. And one person is undoing the back of what she's wearing and taking that off. And then as she steps forward, somebody else is pulling this onto her, and the person behind her is zipping while the hair person is changing. And as they put a compression skirt over her, the 2 people, she has her arms back, somebody else is putting the dress on that way. So it's a lot, and it's all so backstage is all choreography as well. You have to do the same thing and keep the same traffic patterns, or somebody's gonna get hurt.
So Nikia's on the hair crew here. What's your official title?
Assistant hair, wig, and makeup
Hair wig.
supervisor.
And you brought us a couple of the
Yes.
wigs that you work on.
Yes.
I'm happy to be like Vanna White for you and hold them up if you want to.
Okay, this is the Anne wig. Yeah. So this is Anne.
And then when you do Anne, like, what is like,
Well, we use,
what's
like-
something tricky about it?
Well, you have to get this right. This little swoop thing right. Yeah. And this it's a little pull back on the side. And in the beginning, she has a 2 buns in the back. So we have to flip her hair like this and put 2 buns, because during her first song, she takes her hair out and she swings her hair, because she's Anne Hathaway and she's like Shakespeare's wife, but then she plays another character called April, and she incorporates herself into the play. So that's when she takes her
when you
hair
get the
down.
tattoo and the denim vest.
Yeah,
She's
that's
like,
when
I'm letting my hair down.
Yeah, so she's April then.
Which is a big challenge for these hair guys, because
Yeah.
they have to like get this wig.
Yeah.
They style it and hope that it comes down.
Yes, or
Like-
it doesn't come down when she has her buns in, because that happened
Oh, yeah, you
before.
know.
And they have to run backstage and pin them up before she goes back out on stage.
All right, who else you got in here?
I have the nurse, Mel, whose hair is, she has like tight curls. And this one is pretty, because we use a small curling iron, so it takes a lot of time to put these curls in. So, yeah, and she wears like a head wrap around her hair during the show.
And so there's a hair and makeup designer for the show, J. Jared Janis.
Yes.
And so he set all of these designs,
Yes.
but it is Nikia and Sarah, the job to maintain and like do the hair every night, because
Yes.
these are all human wigs, human hair wigs. So they move very naturally on stage. They should look very natural on people's heads. But it means that you have to like keep
Yeah.
doing the styles. 'Cause
Yeah. Every day we have to come in and touch up the hairstyles, and we wash the wigs once a week. And you have to do them exactly the way the designer wants them, or he designed them. So yeah, so they have to be, and they take a lot of time to make these wigs, so you have to be very careful with the wigs.
And then who's the last one that you got in there?
The last one I bought is the player's wig, Nail Veronica. And this one, it takes a lot of time, but this is like one of my favorite. Because it's like a nice texture, curly wig.
And do you have to redo those braids, or?
No, we do these like, maybe I'll do them like every 2 weeks, because they get a little fuzzy from her dancing and sweating. So yeah, but the curls I have to do, because I tighten up these at the bottom, because by the end of the night they're back down like this. But we want to start off nice, so yeah. So yeah, we have to curl these wigs every day.
Question?
How do you decide which cast member wears a wig and who uses their natural hair?
That was up to the wig designer. Yeah.
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 So, I mean, a lot of times it's in conversation with the actors. For some people, like Veronica wears 2 wigs. She plays Lady Capulet, which
Yes.
is like, she's the only person in the show, I think, that has like 2. Oh, the
the
nurse
nurse.
has 2 different
Yeah.
styles of the same wig. But that you need to change a hairstyle really quickly,
Yeah.
and that's just impossible to do with
your natural
your
hair.
real hair.
Yeah.
Like you can change a hairstyle in a wig, and how fast can you change a wig?
I've
You're
done
like-
it in like 10 seconds. Yeah. Like this change when she puts on her second wig, we do it in like 28 seconds, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a quick change. She's changing the wig. the costume and put back on the wig. We're done.
So I have a friend back home who's really interested in makeup design, but we only have like 2 makeup schools in Florida. If you want to get into this professionally, do you recommend like getting a license, or do you think it's easy enough to go into it without that?
I mean, for me, with the hair, I recommend going to get a license because it's easier if you know how to use the tools, how to do the hair, you know what I mean? Like do different textures. Because when you have to do these styles over, you have to do them exactly the way the designer designed them. So for me, it was easier to have a license and be in hair for a while. I mean,
Yeah, well, how did you get here? How did you end up here? Stephen Sondheim
I got
Theater.
here. I was working on Off-Broadway. My friend recommended me because I had a hair salon in New Jersey, so I wanted to do something different. And she recommended me, and I did Off-Broadway for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And then I met Jared on my last show, and he recommended me for this job. Yeah. So, yeah, it would be easier if you had like a little schooling and license.
There's lots of magic that we use in theater, very practical magic, ideas that have been around forever and get like developed and changed and adjusted. I've also done a version of Frozen that you guys know Clint. Clint also did a version of Frozen, and that mechanism, he's like, don't touch me. But like that also has a magical transformation, and that engineering has to get developed. So we use a lot of these old ideas, and they're always getting tweaked and perfected and made to work for like a very specific needs and abilities of like one moment in one show. So like none of the magic is like truly secret, but we just sort of like, there is a nice part about having magic, but this is a very like intimate space. You got to see a little bit of magic and know how it happens. Let's see, is there any other tricks in this show? Oh, there are, but they're not up here. There are many magic costumes in terms of like, they just have to the magic is getting into it very, very quickly and getting out of it very, very quickly.
Okay, so I'm slightly familiar with like styling systems, like the Kibbe system, or like color seasons, like in the way that it tries to suit a person's features or their body. So in a similar way, like where or how in the design process do you start to begin to tailor like your general ideas to the person who's actually cast in the role?
That's a really good question. So in terms of color and style and how we like put them onto adjust them for the cast, that's going to depend on the cast being cast. So a lot of the design development happens before they're cast. In this case, the show had a long workshop process, and a lot of the original actors in the workshops were going to be in the West End. And so I follow people on Instagram. Now I have to follow people on TikTok. It's very annoying because I'm I'm not even a millennial. I'm so old. But I want to get a sense of each actor's style and vibe. And then we take those ideas and be like, oh, hey, this person really loves to wear shorts. And they've got really awesome looking legs. So what if we took this idea that we had that this person was wearing long joggers and then changed them to be cute little layered yoga short things. So that's something that as soon as I have a cast, I start stalking them basically. And then sometimes, especially with the lead, I will try to meet with them, go over the designs. Originally, one of my early sketches of this dress was a white dress. I was like, what if it's a big white? I think even in the research you can see there's a white poofy party dress. And I was like, a white dress with a pink jacket. And the director was our original Juliet on the West End, Miriam Teak Lee. She is 9 feet tall and very skinny and very, very sassy. And he's like, I don't think Miriam would wear that. He's like, it doesn't work for her. And then I watched the workshop and I was like, you're right. And I think she was wearing like a hot pink, like shorts and sports bra. And I was like, I think it needs to be that color. And so a lot of that happens in the workshop process. And then occasionally, it didn't happen on this show really, but there are people who are like, I'm like, this jacket needs to be green. This coat needs to be green for many reasons. It's the family color, it ties you with your sister, it's gonna be on a set with a red background, it's really gonna pop, and the actor is like, I look really bad in green. And I'm just like, there are adjustments we can make. And so in that case, we went in and the coat had a big collar. And I was like, the collar we're gonna get we've got a lot of swatches for the coat itself, like different greens. And we're like, we'll hold them up and we'll pick our favorite. And we did that. And then for the coat collar, we got like a very, very dark green, like almost black, dyed lamb's wool. And so that sort of framed the face. So a lot of times when people are like, I don't wear this color, this is bad color for me, you'd be like, well, the lights on the set are so strong, they're gonna blast your face and we're gonna see your face and you're not gonna have a reflection of, say, like sometimes if I wore this pink dress out in the world, it would actually sort of reflect pink up on my face. But that happens less in the theater because the stars have like spotlights on their face. So we just sort of work on like framing in their face with like friendlier colors, but I don't really subscribe to the seasons. Question, yeah, on the back there.
So there's a lot of different floral designs in the show, and there's a lot of different flowers. Do those flowers have any symbolism for a certain character or the dynamics between characters?
Absolutely. So in the show, there are a lot of floral motifs, and Shakespeare, whose main motif is that he has like a little feather, like a little quill pen, because he's sort of like the Dr. Frankenstein to our zombie Romeo. Romeo has a lot of sort of what you call like a classic English garden rose, like sort of what you would have in the royal rose garden, and that is like symbolizes his connection with the sort of London elite. And then Anne, on the other hand, when she pops out and she's got her big arm tattoo, and then she's also has like on her jacket, she has a lot of what is like a wild rose, which also Shakespeare called a canker rose. Sometimes he called his wife that. And is this sort of like unwieldy, like climbing wild vine. And so it was like, that's Anne's motif. But we have that wild rose sort of expresses itself like when her version of Juliet decides to not kill herself. She's wearing a dress. There's a picture of it there. It's not here, but she has this sort of like long flowing dress. And then it has this brooch that is a silk version of the wild rose. And then May, who's Juliet's best friend and is like totally a creation of Anne. May is a creation of Anne. She's like, Juliet needs a best friend. May has a floral crown that is made out of gold and copper wire, and those also have little wild roses on them. And so it's a little bit that like where that wild rose appears, it's somewhere where Anne has more control of the narrative, and like where we see the more like classic English garden rose, that is where Shakespeare and Romeo and his crew kind of have more of the hold of the narrative. So I wanted like to show you this rack of clothes, and we had Nakia come and bring a couple of these wigs, and we've had Lisa talk a little bit about what it means to maintain a show on Broadway. This show is, I don't know, 10 times larger than this.
Yes.
So there's over 200 costumes that Lisa's department is in charge of taking care of. There are many wigs, I haven't counted them. but I would say like over 20,
Yeah,
definitely.
about 20, yeah.
And they're also responsible for maintaining the makeup supplies and that sort of thing. So it takes an enormous village to like run and maintain a design on Broadway. And so as much as I like love showing off my costumes, I like love being able to have the crew here and seeing like it's one thing to design a show on paper, but designing a show and then getting it to see sort of how it grows and has growing pains and then gets fixed and then gets better and then falls apart and is sort of a magic thing that only happens in theater. Like a movie, you film it, it's done, and here you sort of are always adjusting and fixing, and that's sort of the story of Juliet.